Hello, Providence Rising 5th grade students and families. My name is Mr. Merkel and I'm the band director at Providence School. At Providence, 5th graders have the opportunity to begin studying a musical instrument. This is a very exciting time, and I want to make sure that you and your students know about the instruments that are available to choose from. So we're going to start off with some wonderful videos of fantastic players on all the instruments available for study. That way you get an idea of the kind of beautiful and expressive and fun music that you can make on these instruments that you can begin studying this coming school year. So watch these, and then I'll be back with you with more information about how to produce sound on the instruments and some commonly asked questions about 5th grade band after these videos. Enjoy. I hope that you enjoy those videos of those wonderful musicians. Which instrument sound did you enjoy the most? Many professionals got their start by taking advantage of the same opportunity that's in front of you. They joined their school's band. So let's take a moment to show you how you begin to produce sound on each one of those different instruments. And we're going to begin with the flute. To produce sound on the flute, you're going to blow air down and across an open hole. If you've got a bottle at home, you can try this along with me. The difference between the opening on this bottle and the opening on the flute is that the flute opening is quite a bit smaller. So while I'm holding the flute head joint and making sound on it, I'm going to need to focus my air into a lot smaller space. That opening in my lips is called the aperture. But on the head joint, I'm still not producing a lot of enjoyable melodies. So in order to give me more ability to produce melodies, I need to add the rest of the flute and all of its keys. And now I can produce some melodies. And so that's how you make sound on the flute, by blowing air down and across an open hole. All right, the next two instruments that we're going to look at produce sound by blowing air across a reed that begins to vibrate. Now, some of you might have tried to produce a squeaking sound by using a blade of grass. You can do this by positioning it between your thumbs and blowing, and the blade of grass will begin to vibrate. I took a video of myself doing this earlier. Let's watch. To produce sound on a clarinet or saxophone is done in a very similar way. We're going to take a reed, which is made out of cane that's grown in France. It's very similar to bamboo, which is a type of grass. And this cane, once it's shaped into the shape of a reed, will be able to vibrate back and forth as you blow air past it. So we're going to take a look at how that looks once it's attached to a mouthpiece. Here is the clarinet mouthpiece and barrel, and the reed is attached to the mouthpiece by a ligature. A lot of times on beginning band instruments you come to the metal ligature, but just something to hold the reed on there so that as air passes past it, it begins to vibrate back and forth. Now, we're going to have to hold our face in the right way so that we get the best sound out of this. And so here's how you do that for clarinet and saxophone. Your teeth are going to go on top of the mouthpiece, your lower lip is going to cover your bottom teeth, and then your corners will come in and seal that. If you say the letters E, oo, say that with me. E, oo. That kind of puts your mouth in the right shape to play the clarinet. And so that's what it sounds like just on the barrel and the mouthpiece. Again, not really melodious, so we need to add the rest of the instruments with all of its keys to be able to play a little bit more fun melodies. And so clarinet is a really beautiful instrument. It can play really beautiful, rich, low notes as well as really high notes. And so here's a few different sounds we can make on the clarinet. And then here's some high notes. Really, really beautiful instrument with a lot of range to play in. The other reed instrument that we start in 5th grade band is the saxophone. And the saxophone has a reed just like the clarinet. It's a little bit bigger, and here is that reed attached to the saxophone mouthpiece and on the saxophone neck. So once again, if I just play this part of the instrument, you're going to hear how the vibrations start. Again, you can't really play many melodies without adding the rest of the instrument. So when you play saxophone, you have to use a neck strap. Some clarinet players use neck straps as well, but on saxophone, you really have to use the neck strap to play the instrument properly. So whenever I add the neck to the rest of the saxophone, and go ahead and get everything adjusted here, I can show you how this sounds when you put the rest of the instrument together here. So saxophone also has a pretty good range that it can play. All right, and so that's the saxophone. You might have noticed that all of the woodwind instruments had a lot of keys to press down on the different woodwind instruments. And one of the unique things about the woodwind instruments is that because of all those different keys, generally when you press down the right keys, you get the right notes to come out on these different instruments. Now we're going to be moving into the brass instruments. Now, brass instruments get their names because they're usually made out of brass. Some of that brass is covered in silver, but the way that we play the brass instruments is all the same. All of the brass instruments, the sound is created by buzzing your lips. So can you try this with me? Go. A lot like blowing a raspberry when you were a little kid, right? And that's how you produce the sound in all the brass instruments. So whereas the flute and the clarinet and saxophone are all considered woodwind instruments, but we produce sound differently between the flute and the clarinet and saxophone, all the brass, you're going to buzz your lips. So if I take that buzz and put it into the mouthpiece, I'm going to get a sound. Now sometimes what people do when they first try to play a brass is they just blow air into this. It's not going to make sound. You have to buzz the lips. Sounds kind of funny, almost like a duck call in some ways. But again, once you take that vibration that is in your lips and you put it into the rest of the instrument, it's going to gain more resonance and you're going to gain more control to play more music. And also on the brass instruments, like I was saying, this has a lot less keys than the woodwinds. And so since there's only 3 buttons on the trumpet versus the many keys that are on the clarinet, saxophone, and flute, I do a lot of the controlling of the different notes I play on a brass instrument by how tight or loose my lips are and how fast my air is. So with that kind of idea, I can play things like bugle calls without changing any buttons at all. And so it's really kind of a fun instrument to be able to play, but you have to do a lot of the changing of the notes by having control of your face, because that's where the vibrations start. So far we've talked about creating vibrations for the musical instruments in 3 different ways. We've talked about blowing air across a hole, we've talked about blowing air across a reed to set it in motion, and we've talked about vibrating our lips. And we've got one more instrument where we vibrate our lips, and then we'll talk about the last way that we make vibrations in band. So this is my plastic trombone, also known as a P-bone. I wish I had a brass trombone. You guys will get brass trombones, but this is what I've got to demonstrate on for this video. So I'm going to show you. The mouthpiece for the trombone is a little bit bigger, but we're still going to buzz our lips. It might just be a little bit looser. Okay, but again, once we put that funny sound into the rest of the instrument, it's going to have a lot more resonance. So that's the trombone. And you might notice that this is even more simple than the trumpet. The trumpet had 3 valves. This has 1 slide. But with that simplicity comes a lot of options. You're going to learn, if you play trombone, the different slide positions. There's 7 of them that we try to use. But as you can see, there's a lot of choices that are in between the slide positions. So you always have to be using your ears whenever you play trombone to make those small little adjustments to make sure that you're playing really, really well in tune. So that's the trombone, and that gives you an idea of how you play and how you change notes on the trombone. So we've gone over all 5 of the wind instruments that are offered in 5th grade band, and now it's time to talk about percussion. Now, a percussion instrument is any instrument that you produce the sound by striking it. So this practice pad could be an instrument, the snare drum, the xylophone, even you could be an instrument. So, whenever you learn to be a percussionist, one of the things you have to do is you learn to not just play the snare drum, but you also learn how to play the xylophone or the bells. You learn how to play what we call the mallet instruments. These are arranged the same way a piano is arranged. So if you have any piano experience, it'll help you read the music, but it's not necessary. But you are going to learn to play melodies on those instruments, on those mallet instruments. At the same time, you're going to also be learning the fundamentals of drums. And we usually start with a snare drum, and at home you might practice this on a practice pad just like this. We need to make sure that we hold the stick properly to produce our best sounds whenever we are playing drums. So we're going to hold the stick between the middle joint of the first finger and the thumb just like this, and that way we can play, right? We can play with a lot of clarity and individual detail. If I was to not hold the stick correctly, like extend my finger like this instead, now I don't have any finger control. It's not going to work the same. Likewise, if instead of trying to manipulate the stick from my fingers and my wrist, if I tried to use my shoulder or my elbow, again, I'm not going to be able to do that. So in order to be a successful percussionist, one of the biggest things that you need to be able to do is take instruction and put it into practice carefully. Be very self-disciplined about that. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then make sure that you, when you practice, are building these good habits. That's going to help you be a successful percussionist. So we've gone over all 4 ways to produce sound on our band instruments. By blowing air across a small hole, by blowing air across a reed for the clarinet and saxophone, by buzzing our lips for trumpet and trombone, and by striking things for percussion. Which way did you enjoy making sound the best? During the last part of this video, I want to go over a few commonly asked questions about 5th grade band. So first, I want to let you know that no previous musical experience is necessary to participate in 5th grade band. Certainly, if your student sings well or they know how to play piano, that will help them as a musician, but it's not required to be a part of 5th grade band. We will start from the very beginning. And I've had many musicians who were the first musicians in their family make tremendous progress. So I will help them get started and help them be successful. Secondly, a lot of times I've heard students talk about, oh, I can't do band because I've got sports or some other after-school club. Just know that I have students even in the middle school and high school band who are in sports as well as band. So it's not an issue. You can be a part of both. I've got students in the band who run track, who play football, basketball, baseball. So it can definitely work. I work hard to work with the coaches and to try to minimize the amount of conflicts, even in middle school and high school. In 5th grade band, there's no after-school rehearsals at all. The only after-school things are the 4 performances, and 2 of those performances you would have done anyway as a part of 5th grade general music. The lower school Christmas musical. 5th grade band doesn't perform in the musical, but we perform at the beginning of the musical to open it up, and then 5th grade band performs at Grandparents' Day. So those are 2 performances you would be at anyway. And the only additional performances for fifth grade band is the first performance, which is really exciting because it's the first chance the students get to demonstrate all of the wonderful things they've learned, and that's usually in October. And then the spring concert that features all of our band students from 5th grade through 12th grade, and that's usually in April. So those are the only two additional things that are after school, are those performances. And so in order to make that work, I need to see the students twice a week during the school day. And so this is the compromise that we've done to make that happen. The students will be in band instead of general music. And I think that's, that makes sense. Instead of going once a week to music like they normally would, they'll come to band. But so they can get that second day, because really when we're building these skills and these physical abilities on these new instruments, we need at least a couple of days a week. And even that can be a bit of a challenge. We rotate which day they go to band. And so on one day they might go on Monday and Tuesday, and on the next week they'll go on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the next week it'll be Tuesday and Thursday. And that rotation allows them so that there's one resource that instead of going to that resource, they come to band that week, but it rotates to a different day each week. So that only happens with that particular resource once a month. And this compromise has worked really well for my past 2 or 3 years we've done this. And this year I had over 60% of the 5th graders in band. We had over 2/3 in band. 44, I believe, out of the 63 5th graders were in band, and it was no trouble at all. So I hope that your student, just like that we did this year, is willing to make that compromise. So again, we don't have to have any after school conflicts. We're going to get it done all during school, and we're going to make it all fit in that way. It is a year-long commitment. We don't want to have to worry about changing schedules back and forth, and that could cause some difficulty balancing numbers. So most students find that they really enjoy playing the instrument, but it can take some work. And so there might be certain points in their development where there's highs and lows. And so we definitely ask that you stay in for the whole year. And if it's something that at the end of the year your student realizes they don't enjoy, then you've got all of middle school and high school to try other things. But if it is something that they enjoy and they've gotten a start in 5th grade, then they have a leg up on so many other people around here, because a lot of other schools don't start band around here until 6th grade. So if you get in band in 5th grade, then you're more prepared to take advantage of some opportunities. For example, this year we had several of our students who were members of the all-district honor band that was the best students, best instrumental musicians from Duval and Nassau County. And we had the highest representation in the middle school honor band, except for La Villa. The School of the Arts was the only one that had more than us, but we had the next highest. And most of the students who made it into that were a product of being in the 5th grade band 2 years ago. So you get an early start. You get a leg up on the competition. So if you think there's any interest at all in learning to play a musical instrument, this would be the year to try it. Give it that shot this year. And if you don't like it, you can do something else next year. But if you do, then you're ahead of the game and you've really gotten an early start on a lifelong skill that's going to bring you a lot of joy. How will we select which instrument that you learn to study? Well, you're going to be a big part of that selection. Whenever you sign up on my website, I want you to put in what your top 3 choices are that you'd like to play. Number 1, I'd really like to play this instrument. Number 2, number 3, put your top 3 choices of instruments you'd like to play. We will do our very best to give everyone their first choice. And most years we're able to give almost the vast majority their first choice. But we have to make sure we have a balanced band so we can play music that fits as an ensemble, as a team. And so there might be some people that get their second choice or third choice, but usually we try to give everybody their first choice or their second choice. And so that's kind of how we do that. I didn't have a chance to actually put the instrument in your hand this year and let you actually feel it, but I tried to show you as much as I could through this video. So hopefully you got a sense for how you produce the sounds on the different instruments and how you and what the different instruments sound like, the different beautiful sounds that they make, and you have an idea of which instruments you would most like to learn your musicianship through. And that's really the bottom line, is that no matter which instrument you play, you're learning to be a better musician. The instrument that I've studied the most is trumpet, but you heard me play on all the different instruments, and I have fun playing on all of those. I've also learned to play guitar and piano and bass, and in my church on a regular basis I'm called upon to play those instruments. But where I developed my musicianship the most was by playing trumpet. But that musical skill that I learned through trumpet was able to transfer to so many other instruments. So you can really build musical skill by studying any one of these instruments. Which brings me to another point. We don't start every single band instrument in fifth grade band. The instruments we don't start that are normally a part of a band include oboe and bassoon, French horn, euphonium or baritone as it's called, and tuba. But there's a lot of instruments that we do start in fifth grade band that could easily transfer to those instruments if your student wants to transfer over to those in middle school or high school. But I'd start with limited instrumentation. Again, with that short 2 days a week that we have, I want to simplify it at least a little bit so we can be really effective and efficient with our time. And if we added on all those extra instruments, it would just make things more complicated and more difficult for me to serve all the students as well as I can. So those are options to switch to in middle school and high school band. So one last thing, all you have to do now is just sign up on the website if you're interested in being a part of the band. Go to my Be a Part of the Band website, fill in your top choices, any questions you have there. That's all you have to do now. You don't have to get an instrument. You don't have to rent or buy an instrument right now. We'll take care of all of that in the fall. I have vendors I work with that will help you get those. If you are thinking about trying to get an instrument ahead of time, please contact me. If you just go on Amazon and find a wind instrument for a couple $100, it's probably not going to be a very good quality. And so if you're looking to buy an instrument, please contact me and I'll put you in touch with a vendor or steer you towards someone, a source where you can get a good quality instrument. Because the last thing I want is for your student to get an instrument that breaks easily, doesn't function well, because that'll cause more frustration. So they might be a talented player, but because the instrument doesn't function well or breaks on them, they get frustrated and they give up. And I don't want that for any of my young musicians. So our local vendor rents most of the instruments for $24. And if you want the protection plan in case of any accidents, I think it goes up to $30. Saxophone is a little bit more, but the rest of the instruments, $30, and you're covered for accidents as well as renting every month. And that fee each month also goes towards purchasing that instrument. So eventually, at the end of that time, your student will have an instrument of their own. So it's not a huge cost, but wait until the fall. All you need to do now is, if your student is interested in taking advantage of this opportunity and playing a musical instrument, trying something new, just go to my website and sign up. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I hope that it's been informational, and I hope I get a chance to work with your family and your student in the fall and just see the awesome growth that takes place in them as a person and as a musician. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.